Hello, Chris. Thanks for joining Backend with Gerald Black. It's really a pleasure having you on my podcast, where we try to dig in and really find out what happens behind the scene. Right? It's a pleasure having you here today. And for the benefits of those who don't know who Chris is, I think I'll just let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jared, for having me on your podcast. My name is Chris Kwekowe. I co-founded a company called SlateCube that basically builds digital platforms that help integrate entry-level talents into the workforce and also sort of help companies hire early career professionals and also upskill them as well. Um, I'm a product guy. I stepped down from SlateCube in 2021 and I joined a company called M Pharma. I was I was group product manager at M Pharma, helping them build out their supply chain process, um, just improving and optimizing the ability to move items and drugs, life saving drugs from their warehouses to the pharmacies and chemists that served communities within Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and we're just expanding to Gabon by the time I left. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm a product guy. I build products, digital products for startups, scale ups, and also established businesses.
Awesome,
That's
awesome, awesome. You mentioned, you left M Pharma. So do you want to share what you're currently up to?
yeah. I mean, it's public news now. I'm director. I just joined Jetstream as director of product. It's
Awesome.
very exciting time. Just I think I like what Jetstream tries to do, which is facilitate intra-Africa trade, but also just empowering African startups to export their local commodities to the international market. I think it's very interesting and it's very exciting to sort of come into a company at the stage where they are and build out the tech and product that will help facilitate the goal, this lofty goal that they have. And then,
Yeah,
I mean, one thing that's very evident is the fact that I like to build for African startups. Like I've always loved that story. I mean, people remember that story of me, rejecting a Microsoft job. Um, I think I think it tells the kind of interest I have for like facilitating growth for tech within the continent and just helping African startups scale.
awesome, awesome. Well, you've touched on a lot of things, and we'll come right back to all of those things you touched. I remember back in the days, I think we connected in 2016 or 17, if I'm not mistaken. And, you were one of the very early stars we had in the Nigerian or even African tech ecosystem, right? From your days of the Anzisha Prize, and all of that. But just before we get into Slate Cube, right? I think I'm just curious, right? So, what were the things you were doing prior to Slate Cube, and what led to you building Slate Cube? So you can just provide some background, and then touch a bit on what made you build Slate Cube.
Yeah, it's very interesting when I hear this question because like most people feel like my life started at Sleepy, but I think to a large extent it did. Right? We officially registered SlateCube as a company in 2018, but prior to that, SlateCube was like a product within my very first company, which was Microbolt, right? And the whole idea was uh, back in school. So I went to Unizik first. I don't know for those who don't know. I went to Unizik and I schooled there, studied computer science. But interestingly, a year before I got into Unizik, I wrote in for medicine and surgery, which was
Wow.
very interesting because yeah, and then of course I checked my the usual Nigerian story. I didn't see my name in the first list. I didn't see my name in the second list. So I just didn't I just stopped checking, right? And then during that year I decided to take a gap year and just like focus on just figuring out what exactly I really wanted to do and why I was even choosing to do medicine in the first place. And then, during the course of that period, I met this guy who was at Uniben, and I'd been curious as to how when you log into Facebook, and I give this example to everybody because like that's my story. You log into Facebook or any digital platform, for instance, or social networking, because that was the phase when like the whole craze about
Yeah.
social platforms, like yeah. So I'm like, you go to Facebook.com and your wall shows you a different experience, and then somebody else is on the same site and they're seeing a different thing, and I wanted to know why, how, because like my own experience of computing at the time was just, you go to, if I give you a Microsoft Word document and you open it, the same thing that I have on my screen is what you're going to have. So I really wanted to know how that whole thing worked. Unlike, I guess, most people who just wanted to, have an account and just network and like talk to people and all that. I really wanted to know how these things worked. And so I just realized that has always been like my kind of person. Like I've always wanted to explore beyond just be a customer of a service. I always
Yeah.
wanted to know how to build. So I met this guy. I was screened at Unibet at the time, and then he mentioned to me that and he gave me like the intro. I don't want to spend too much time talking about that, but
Yeah,
basically
sure.
he said there's computer science, computer engineering. In Nigeria, if you're doing computer engineering, you're basically doing electrical and electronics engineering, and that's not what I wanted to do. But if you wanted to build software and like code that solves that you could sort of use on the internet, on the browser, and like on mobile devices, then you might want to do computer science. So that was when I was sold, and I wrote for computer science. My name came out, and I go to school to do clearance, right? Because when you join, you have to do like the traditional clearance. And then they tell me I actually had an offer for medicine and surgery from the previous year.
Wow.
My
Wow.
name came on the
Wow.
on the supplementary list, and she was like, "Well, this has happened before. If you want to pursue it, like there's still an avenue." And then I said no, and the guys who were around me were shocked because like I was
Everybody
so I was
mentally.
so glad I did not do medicine. And it's that thing where you go to I know everybody has experienced this. If you're in the arts class, science, or I mean, if you're in you're in high school, in Nigeria, you have arts, commercial, and science class, right? If you're in the sciences, it's either medicine and surgery or engineering. Or, I mean, if you're exposed a little bit, then there's pharmacy, but that's it. And then if you're in the commercial class, you're considering banking and finance, accounting, all that stuff. And then arts, obviously, the first thing is law before anything else. So that's how sort of like people were conditioned. But anyways, I got in, I did computer science, and I was very, very big on like all my programming courses. I think I had A in all my
Wow.
programming courses. The
Wow.
other ones who I felt the courses were distractions. Like I wasn't keen on like bio 101 that we did in like the first year, like all those general studies courses. I mean, I'm not saying people shouldn't take those things seriously, but like in the grand scheme of things, those things don't really matter. Even I know people try to make arguments as to you have to be a grounded person
Yeah.
and like supposed to be where you specialize. But I think at the same time, I was looking at my peers at Stanford, right? Because we're using the EDX platform. And I was looking at there, I think it was called CS50. It was a course on EDX called CS50. And I was seeing that in the first semester of the first year, guys were already writing like pure programs that were running on like computers. And our lecturers were writing code on the board. Imagine. So,
I don't think
so
much has changed today.
exactly. So like it was, and I think for me, I was lucky that I think in the second semester, if I'm not mistaken, I met this guy called Majesty who was very big on like actually writing code and like having us have our laptops and test these things. And because many of the guys who end up doing computer science, at least as at the time I was studying, were doing computer science because they didn't get into medicine or they didn't get into like an engineering course, right? I, on the other hand, was one of the very few who wanted to study computer science. Like I really
Yeah.
and remember, it's not as it is now, where a lot of people are now trying to going for computer science. Back then, people weren't really so keen on like doing computer science. So, anyways, I connected with this lecturer. We're very close, and yeah, fast forward after I finished and started Slate Cube, he actually became one of our board of directors.
Oh,
He
wow.
yeah, he was on the board for a bit. Moved from the school and went over to I think it was Sheffield University or University of Sheffield. I'm not sure which one now. But that's that. And anyways, I give this background because after finishing school, right, I had a ton of my classmates who, um, well, not finishing. Before we finished, a ton of my classmates wanted to do the compulsory industrial training that you have to do in your third year. That's 300 level. Um, and so a huge chunk of them came over to do it at our office in Lagos. But I still had friends who couldn't come to Lagos, didn't live in Lagos, and obviously we had our constraints because like the office was a small. I mean, it was a small space initially.
Is this microboard now or Slate Cube?
No, no, microboard. Microboard was the precursor to Sleep. Yeah.
Okay.
So they came over, and then we said, you know what, we can make some of these classes that we're creating like a toned down version of what you find online. And then we'll just record sessions that we have in person in the office and just make it available to these guys online. We just build a very small, we're not thinking of building a company or anything. Like we just said, and that's basically what we did. We put together the content, and some of my classmates were taking these things very seriously, taking the classes, and then we introduced tests just to sort of, and yeah, and that was basically it. And then we said, you know what if we could offer a virtual internship to people? And remember, I'm talking about at this time, the only guys who were doing what we were sort of thinking about was Sheshewa. I don't know if you even remember them now.
No,
Sheshewa
not at
back then
all.
was, yeah, they were doing this in collaboration with the Lagos State government.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Shewa means Shewa, which is Yoruba for she work day. Is there
Ah,
work? Is there something like
yeah.
exact? So I remember that that was the only thing that was. So we modeled some of what we're trying to do after them, but also brought in the tech beat because they didn't have that tech beat in what they were doing. And then we sort of it grew because like some of my friends were now saying, "Oh, can we?" I mean, we have other classmates from other schools who would want to sort of join this program, and then we just opened it up to them, like, and that was it. Like, it wasn't like I sat down and said, "What's this next big thing that we have to do?"
Yeah.
And it wasn't like we felt like we needed to start a company. Like my microboard, by the way, was an IT servicing firm. Nothing interesting. The only interesting bit to what we did back then was what's it called? I had some like I don't know how this guy at MTN had found out about what I was doing, but he reached out and wanted me to speak to his alumni, like a high school in Ibadan. And so I came over, I talked about what we were doing at Microball, and he was very impressed. So we maintained that relationship.
Yeah.
Anyways, he eventually reached out and we did an R&D for like a tablet device. This was when techno was basically just still coming out, not what it is today. And we did an R&D. I think it cost me about $1,000. We were able to get 10 devices from China. We designed everything here.
Wow.
Yeah, we designed it here. I worked with some of my classmates even, and then sent the prototype and everything to the designs and everything to a company in China, and they were more than happy to do this for us for $1,000. You can imagine what you can do with it. $1,000 can't do much now, but like back
Yeah.
then, yeah, and I was lucky to have.
It's exciting how, I've been following the journey from school to,
Yeah,
you found an opportunity which was actually solving a problem because a lot of people wanted to learn on what, possibly was the next big thing, right? And I presume this gave birth to Slate Cube, right?
yeah,
So now let's talk about Slate Cube, right? You won the Azisha Prize. You won a lot of prizes, grants. You were all over the world. I know you were in Tel Aviv at a point. That's Israel. So I would like to hear a bit about that journey, right? Building. How were you able to, get the Azisha Prize? How did you get this going?
yeah. So it was a perchance encounter with the Anzisha Prize. I don't even know what happened, but I started Slate Cube at the time. I was back in school now, and um, we were basically trying to scale what we're building. And it was very interesting because we were seeing people use this. And by the way, we made our service entirely free, weren't really charging. It was later on, like someone was saying, and you can charge these companies, to onboard these guys, and you can like charge a small percentage on like the learning. And we had all this fantastic idea of things we wanted to do for free. Anyways, I think we were just about to write some of our exams, and then I don't know how. I really don't know because I was subscribed to a lot of business email digests that were very popular back then. I think I was following Business Insider. These guys, Morning Brew had just started at the time. There were a lot of like, so I had stumbled on the news about the Anzisha Prize, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's apply. I don't know, but like, we're solving a social problem. We have some traction. We have some revenue. Why not, right? And there's potential for this to grow, so why not? And obviously, there's a potential for it to serve markets outside Nigeria. So
Yeah,
it's something to explore.
scalable.
Exactly. So we applied. And I left. Okay, yeah, this was in my final year. Yeah, so I applied, and it was around that same time that I got into MIT, and so I just left to MIT. I was there for a bit, And then I got notified that we had made it to the semi-finalist round, which was very interesting. I think at the time there was 800 people who applied,
Wow.
quality applications. It was, and then the semi-finalist was down to, I think, 30 or 25 people. So now they had to select the finalists, and I think finalists was about 12 people at the end of 12 or 8. I think 8. Yeah, so either 12, I'm not sure now. Honestly, it skips my mind what that number looks like. But then, yeah, so right after right after MIT, I had to come down to Nigeria. But it was very tricky too, because I don't want to go into all the details, because now you
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
get it South Africa, and it was wild. And there's a whole story there as to how, some miracle had to happen for me to get that visa in such a short time. But then, yeah, we came in here, and then there were all these young guys with very fascinating business ideas, from like guys who were building solutions using solutions in like the energy space, using solar to power entire communities in Tanzania.
What do
Uh,
you think, what do you think
yeah,
stood out? What do you think stood out for the judges that particularly made you win? Right. I mean, from the judging criterias,
yeah.
was it the scalability of the idea, or the uniqueness? What do you think was the qualifying thing that actually made you win that award?
It's
Or was
tricky,
it,
but I think what, according to me,
or was it you? Was it your presentation skills? Was it your confidence?
honestly, remember I was still like what I know people would say, but I was like 22 at the time. I'm an old man now, so and I know I don't look it, but like yeah, um, yeah. I think when I really think about it, right, and I think one of the judges was Sangu Dele. I don't know if you know him. I think one of the key things there was the social impact of what we're trying to build and the kind of results that we're already getting at the time. We had a 90% success rate in terms of like placing young people into employment. And I told a story about like, people who had met, right? People who after 10 years of graduating from like conventional tertiary institutions who didn't have any real paying job or any like or were underpaid, and how what we're doing was helping improve the capacity of young people to get into like the opportunities that they dreamt of. So I think that storytelling too in the pitch was very good, but also the fact that there was substance to what we were selling. We're not like some snake oil merchants selling something that wasn't real. They could see it, like, and they had to set it down. Yeah, you know the story with all this. Like, we see some interesting startups these days, raising, raising interesting amounts of money, and there's really no. Yeah. Anyways, that's by the way. So yeah, it was that, and we're done all of this without any funding. It was bootstrap entirely from my pocket. I didn't have any network, and how everybody around me was supporting what we are trying to build. So I guess that's why I was shocked, even when because like you don't know until the prize ceremony when they announced the names. I was thinking I was probably, if at best, I was going to be like third or something. And I was so shocked when they announced the third place winner, the second place winner, and I was like, okay, fine. I mean, I didn't get this, and it's okay. And then they called my name. I was so shocked. I didn't. So here's the interesting bit. Just before we move on, right? They had asked all of us to prepare for a speech when we were called, right? I didn't bother. I didn't even think of it. I was like, nah, this is not for me. I'm not gonna get involved. And then when they called me and I had to come out and say something, I was like, I did not prepare anything. Just so you guys tell you how like I believe in what we're doing, and I was like very, very confident in like our ability to solve problems. But like competing on that scale with other very, very interesting young people who are building some very fascinating product. I
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess
So
if there's any story there, is that like just keep pushing and keep doing your thing, and just like people who will appreciate what you're doing will definitely do that, and there's no need to
yeah,
you undermine yourself. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so a very core part of this conversation is always about the challenges, right? Because, oftentimes entrepreneurs or founders like to show us only the glamorous side. We often don't get to see the smashing, the bashing, the hardcore work, the challenges, the pains, the sweat, So
yeah,
I think I would like you to share some of your experiences, right? So what were some of the most challenging things that you had to face while building Slave Cube? And how did you overcome those challenges?
yeah. I give you one example. So we were very confident in what we were building. We had finished, Tony Lumelu. We had all these nice accolades that we had gotten, and we're like, you know what, people will be willing to work with us. And so, what did we do? We wrote these very fancy proposals, and we sent them out to, um, I think, 20 universities in Nigeria, and we made them priority. So DHL, we made sure it was priority. All the cash that we had some money at the time,
Yeah.
and nobody got back to us.
Wow. What was the offering? What were you trying to do with the university?
They're saying, hey, let's help you guys build out your career development arm within your school, and we're going to give you guys SlateCube content. We're also going to match your graduates to universities. It's going to increase your competitive advantage when it comes to like other schools who are not using our service, right? And it's also going to improve the number of graduates you're able to throw and put into gainful employment post graduation.
Yeah.
This was a great offer for them. But then we got to realize that universities, quite frankly, don't care, and it's very unfortunate. Like they don't care. You pay your
Wow.
school fees, go through and then you get like they don't really care, right? And even if they do, they'd rather work with like a foreigner as opposed to like someone within. We don't. We have very. I mean, I think that has changed now, just because of some government regulations mandating certain people to use local tech,
Mm.
but also the fact that I think there's also the mindset shift. We've seen successes with companies like Paystack, and so there is a lot of confidence in like the local tech ecosystem in Nigeria, but also like in Africa. But back then it wasn't, and I'm telling like people don't know how much has changed.
What year was this?
All of this is like 2015 to 2017, really,
Awesome.
2017. So it's like, or 2018 max. So yeah, that has changed now. And I remember someone was saying that if SlateCube came way before its time, and to an extent, I do agree because like we're seeing the likes of Stu10, we're seeing the likes of like these other guys who are building, and I do know many of these guys by the way. And I have a friend here who basically has now moved his edtech company to it's valued at $2 billion. So that is
Wow.
a unit, right?
Wow.
We built our platform. I think we came out a little bit too early, and there are a lot of stories like that, right? And it's a lot of learning. There's a lot of learning that we've sort of
Yeah.
gained from
Do
that.
you have any regrets though, or anything you will have done differently if you had the chance?
I think we did pretty much what we could. We did the best we could do at the time, and we worked with what was available to us. Like that's the honest truth. I don't feel in any way that we didn't do our very best. We did the best we could. Safety is still running, by the way, just that I'm not actively running and handling. And I think also that has in itself, sort of slowed things down. But
Yeah.
in general, I'm proud of the work we did. All of the opportunities that we are getting now, and by we I mean like the founding team, it's because of the initial work we did with SlateCube. People trust us. People expect that we are, and that's the thing about working with like founders. Even when you get to work in like a regular job or a startup, right? Your ability to learn is 10 times faster than the average person because like you had to be the CEO, the CTO, the CFO, the admin officer, the even the legal. We were talking about this earlier. You were literally all of that stuff, right? And so it comes with you having to learn very quickly and think on your feet. And
True.
that's why usually entrepreneurs or like people with startup experience tend to do several times better than like the average person.
I
So
often
not
I often like to pull a wild card, right? A wild card gives me the opportunity to ask a question you never saw coming, right? So now that I have you here, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to talk about this, right? My question is around the whole story with Bill Gates and Microsoft. It's on Linda AKG, it's on Yahoo News, it's everywhere. It's everywhere, right? So I think I would love to hear from the horse's mouth, right? First
yeah.
question: did you really turn down a job from Bill Gates? Because I mean, all the stories we have out there, we see you right next to Bill Gates in the picture, and it's like,
And then there's
I'm not working for you, dude. Like, that's how it's like,
and
no,
it's like yeah, as I'm there, I'm looking at him, I'm telling him, bro, I can't work with
no, I'm not working. Yeah, so I think I would like to hear that, right? So,
you.
yeah, what was that
Um,
about? Yeah,
and it's funny. I mean, those stories have stopped now, but like back then, it's like every 2 years the story comes out, and look at Chris pictured with Bill Gates as he turned down. You know, like so. First thing is that's not true. I did turn down a job offer from Microsoft, right? But not from Bill Gates, right? And people must remember that yes, Bill started Microsoft, but like he had since left Microsoft and was running the Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
And also, we've in some capacity collaborated with the Gates Foundation. We were even in Seattle earlier this year at the Gates Foundation headquarters, right? They had invited us. They were trying to build some technology around. Well, they're trying to fund and get involved with like startups who are building stuff using like AI, machine learning, and all those fancy stuff. So we were there, and of course, it's AI for like social good and like yeah, social impact. So I think I've addressed the first one. The first one is I didn't turn down a job from Bill Gates. It was Microsoft, and it was before that meeting. The only thing that happened during that meeting was me saying, in that conversation, right? And interestingly, it was here in South Africa, right? Where it was in Durban, where it was a program that I was there with Bill, and then there were some other entrepreneurs who were building like solutions to problems on the continent. And I was asking Bill, I said, he had a foundation. He had an investment arm called Cascade Investments. I don't know if that still runs. And I was saying, I was looking at his portfolio of investments, and there was not one African business. And I said, how are you churning in these billions of dollars into social impact projects on the continent and not investing in startups? Wouldn't you think that the most sustainable way to push development on the continent is by funding start entrepreneurs who are solving social problems and understand that they're entrepreneurs and don't expect you to always throw grants to them, as opposed to government agencies and like NPOs and NGOs who rely on donors and funding from external partners and well, donors, right, to run every single operation that they sort of do. And that was my question, right? And I was like, yeah, and I said, by the way, entrepreneurs like myself who've turned down jobs from, believe it or not, Microsoft, some of the people I think might make the most sense for you to sort of invest in. But that was the conversation. And then, of course, trust sensational blogs. They said, I there was nothing I didn't hear. But yeah, I would like to set the record straight. Um, yeah,
I
that
think
that
I think I already have a title for this podcast, right? I did not turn down a job from Bill Gates. Controversy. Controversy sells, right? So,
no,
do,
yeah,
do you do you see yourself building another startup anytime in future?
absolutely, absolutely. I think I have 5 years to play, and I don't want my current employers to hear this, but I think I have. Yeah, I mean, it's like I know that I want to actively contribute to building uh, to helping established startups and scale ups build digital products that can last for a century or even more. That's my plan, but I'm not going to be doing that for too long. I'm excited about where I am right now. I think is the perfect place to sort of do some of that or
Yeah.
most of that.
How I'm curious though. I'm curious. How were you able to manage the transition from being a founder to now, being a part of a team, right? Because I know the latter has you calling the shots most of the time, right? But now you're having to work with a team where you're contributing, and you just have a role to play. So I know a lot of times people struggle with those very two worlds, right? So how were you able to transition and still give your best?
So I think people need to understand that as an entrepreneur, right? You while the buck stops on your desk or your table, right? It's very important to understand that here's I going with this. That when you work for a company, you can never be overworked if you're an entrepreneur moving to a startup. Like you can never, because if you have, let's say for instance, I'm responsible for product, right? I know my stakeholders, I know what we have to do, like my KPIs are very, but as an entrepreneur, or like as an entrepreneur, you are responsible for every single team that you have on your, like in as much as you have like heads of what, directors, VPs, SVPs, and whatever you have, you still are going to be held responsible if you don't if they don't meet their targets, right? And so that's the difference. But like when you work in a company, I think it gives you, while you come in with your entrepreneurial mindset of I'm responsible for a lot more than what I'm doing now, it helps you to achieve your goals very easily.
Yeah,
And it's okay. It's a fine trade off for not being in control of everything. Also, how companies are structured these days is founders who are hiring other founders know that they have to defer to these other people for their areas of expertise. Like I'm a product guy. I don't expect like yeah, that's the relationship. They expect that I call the shot when it comes to product, but it's a collaboration at the end of the day. I've never even running a business, right? I mean, in the early stages, obviously, I was trying to micromanage all my team members, and but like as you grow, you sort of realize that if you hire someone to take up a responsibility, let them be the highest authority in that space, and then you just ask them questions. That's the best thing that you want to do as an entrepreneur. So I don't really see that there's so much of a trade off if you work for a company that respects you, that values you, and allows you to make decisions on your own.
Okay, okay. I have two final questions, and we can bring this to a close, right? So, I think the first one would be, what part of your childhood, your parents, your siblings, your life basically prepared you for everything you're doing today, right? Was there a particular type of upbringing or training that you had, to
Yeah,
do all the things you're doing?
it's a very good question. I'm even glad you asked. Prior to this call, I was speaking to my mom, and she was like, and we don't. By the way, we don't speak pidgin in my house. So when she said this, it was quite funny. She was like, "Nobody today starts." That's what she
Uh,
said. It made me laugh. It's like I understand what she was saying. So I don't come from a wealthy home. Things are a lot better now. I'm grateful to God for all of that. But like my dad made some decisions back then that I don't know. Even now, in retrospect, I don't know what informed it. But like back then, he decided that you know what he was going to buy a computer for us. Like he bought a, I think it was a Windows 95. Yeah, I remember back then, and I think that set up the right tempo for like all of this because now I mean I'm within the computers and like devices, but back then like he bought that, and unlike what most people were keen on doing with their devices, for those of my friends who had like were playing games, and I think they were like all these games back then. Like I wanted to, I was I was I was trying to figure out how certain things worked. I was exploring. I really wanted to know how this whole thing worked. I was writing. I think we were writing Basic at the time, just playing with the whole programming space. I wanted to create because like he would bring a disc and say, "Oh, this disc has like some of the songs that he likes." And rather than just play the song, I want to know how those songs got on that disc. I wanted to, and so that was I think that helped a lot. And then my parents also taught us that we were five. We were five, actually, five kids. So they're not going to buy MP3 and MP4 and MP5 for everybody. So, and so sometimes they don't buy those things. And if you want to, they'll teach you how to sort of, figure out a way to make money. And so I remember back then, it was a story that I would always tell my brothers just to motivate them. I wanted to buy an MP5 and I did everything. I will go in, we had a farm. I will go into the farm. I will go pluck vegetables, put things, and I would sell that. I was in high school, by the way. I just put it somewhere in. So we lived at a place close to Redemption Camp. That was where I went to school, and I just put it there and then had someone sort of help me sell while I go and I get what it like. Yeah, and that was very. And the thing is, people don't want to do those things these days, right? Everybody feels entitled. Now, I mean, I earn a couple millions every month, and that's great. But like back then,
Million.
I it's none of your business, Jared.
We'll
We'll
have
take
a conversation after.
I'll take pawpaw, I'll take, sugarcane, I'll take stuff that we had in our farm and I'll put it and then I have to figure out the pricing. So I think those things helped me sort of get very
Yeah.
entrepreneurial in how I went about pricing my products now, even how I think about how consumers would think about services that we're selling to them, how they make those decisions for do I buy, do I not buy, do I buy later, do I pay in installments, that kind of thing. So that helped me. And here's the interesting bit of that story. My dad and my mom allowed me to take that. Like, yeah, fine, like whatever. Just you're not stealing anybody's money. It's your stuff, and you're able to manage that with school. And they really liked it. Anyways, I put that out, and I actually I should have said this before that. I went to the market this one time with my mom, and I saw an MP5. Loved it. It was a very nice one that you flip, and like you could play videos, and like I really loved it. But I knew that they were not going to buy it for me. So I went in and asked the guy how much. He told me I think then it was like 4,500 or so. This was like imagine me back in high school. So I was like, okay. So that's what I did. Put together those vegetables, And I raised enough money and I went back and bought. So I think that sense of accomplishment when I was able to buy that thing made me realize that if you put a plan together and you're able to put together something that people want to pay for, you can basically do whatever you want to do. I think so that upbringing was very helpful to, um, I guess, get me to where I am today.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So our final question would be, uh, actually, it's a twofold question, right? But it's the final one, I promise. Um, so what's your take on the entire African tech scenery? Do you think we're headed in the right direction with the products you see today, the founders, the quality of execution? And secondly, what would be your advice for emerging founders, looking to build and solve, very key problems in our society today?
That looks like a four-pronged question, but I will try and respond as much as I. And if I miss anything, please correct me. First of all, I always point to the pay stack case study. I think, in a way, yes, but I think there's this very terrible culture that we have, which is if somebody's doing something, then we feel like um, everybody should be doing the same thing. And the classic
Replicating
example,
ideas.
yeah, plus classic example is the fintech space, right? Um, but the people who really cared about the problem and moved towards solving it are the ones who are better off for it today. And I feel like every bargaining entrepreneur who wants to um, start a company or solve a problem must figure out the market size and figure out if people actually have the capacity to pay for it. And I think also, interestingly, we have a bunch of incubator and accelerator programs on the continent now, from the likes of like your Techstars, organized by I forget their name now, and they're helping sort of shape the startups and the entrepreneurs that we have. And I think that's really good. There were some very interesting ones I was very excited to work with the Texas Lagos program from January, I think, of this year. So that's good. I think, I mean, we have Lagos, Nigeria is not short of people with fantastic ideas, but helping them shape those ideas into like scalable products and profitable companies is, I think, what we need to consciously do and like do at scale and at that would just be my take. Um, People should not pursue entrepreneurship just because it sounds fancy. It isn't, and that's the thing that you're
Yeah.
going to discover when hits the fan. So it's good to sort of we romanticize, and I think it's good you asked the question you asked earlier. And of course, I couldn't have taken all the time to sort of get into that, but like entrepreneurship is not easy. It's hard.
No,
It's very
it's,
difficult. You're going to go days when I see Gerard laughing.
it's
It's
not.
it's not
We
because
talk about
like
it all the time, so yeah, I know what you're
yeah,
talking
you
about.
you see all the nice headlines. I mean Forbes 30 under 30, great. But like there were times when I couldn't pay salaries, right? Being a Forbes 30 under 30. And many of these things are, and it's unfortunate that some of these accolades now, and I'm not saying that that's what they're doing, but I do know that some of these things, like people, they don't hold the value that they typically had before, right? Where people are now bribing their ways to get certain things. People are lying on their financial reports just to seem a particular kind of way. It's not it's like, don't look at those things. I think that would be my advice to entrepreneurs and like what I think is going wrong in our society today. And don't get into fraud. Don't create fake enterprises and go list in and then list on the New York. Like, don't
Oh my
do those
God.
things. Like getting, I think we want to glorify entrepreneurship without doing the work. We don't want to get involved with like the dirty bits, like which is like actually building a product, right?
To work.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm beginning to see as the what's the word now? It's a pattern I'm seeing in like the tech ecosystem in Africa that I really would like. I mean, some reports were released the other day about like some shady behavior by entrepreneurs in Kenya, and it's not acceptable because what that means is we were encouraging a generation of young people to forget about traditional 9 to 5 jobs and go create solutions to some of the biggest problems on the continent, and thereby creating jobs as well. But now, what we are doing is we're bastardizing entrepreneurship and being a founder by creating this, I mean, facilitating this bad ego, this culture of It doesn't matter what the product is. It doesn't matter what the service is. Just prop it up, do whatever you can, get the lights, cameras, look good. Speaking like there was a time when I consciously said I wasn't going to be entertaining any of those anymore. Like and just sit down and actually build the product and improve the service we're offering to our customers. And I think if entrepreneurs sort of did that, they will be better off for it. Their companies will be better off for it. Their bottom line will be better off for it, and their customers will be better off for it, and their investors will be better off for it too. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Thanks a lot, Chris, for jumping on this with me. I know I've been trying to get you to do this for for a very long time, and finally here we are. I really appreciate. One last thing. What is the best way to reach you? I remember back then, a simple Facebook message. That was how we connected, right? So back then, a simple Facebook message would do, right? But today, what is the best way? Is it LinkedIn? Is it email? For those who are trying to get across to you.
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best way. And on LinkedIn, I have a link on LinkedIn that allows you to sort of schedule I think it's a 25 minutes session, and I'll be happy, and it's for free. So
Yeah.
anybody who wants to
Session on what?
so ideally product, anything around products. If you want to build a product, if you're thinking about like product design, product revamp, but also if you just want to vent about your startup, yeah, I I will make time as much as is possible. So just schedule something in, and I'll be happy to speak with whoever.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, for those trying to reach out to Chris, a simple message on LinkedIn would do. And, fortunately, Chris is very open to having conversations with as many as possible, right? I'm really grateful for this time. Thank you for jumping on Backend with me once again. It's really, really appreciated. Do
Pleasure
enjoy
is
the
mine.
rest of the week.
Thanks, man. Cheers.